Hello, welcome to Geeking Out with Shad. Today I'm going to talk about Cascading Style Sheets, otherwise known as CSS. CSS is how you make a page look better. Granted, I'm probably not going to make this page look better, but I'm going to show you how you can control how these things look. Most websites you go to, they look pretty good, and there's colors and formatting and all that stuff. So far in this tutorial, all we've done is add some tags, to talk about the basic structure, things like that, created a link, created a button, all of that, but we haven't done anything about controlling how these things are laid out on the page or how they look or color or any of that. So today we're going to talk about the absolute basics of CSS or styling your page. So as you can see, things are pretty bland here. Links, this is the default link, so before you ever click on the link, it'll be a blue color. Once you click on it, it'll be considered visited, and so it turns a purple color. This is very old school. If you go back to web pages in the early days, this was done this way. So if you had a really basic web page, the user could look and see what have I clicked on and what have I not. But we usually override that functionality nowadays, and so you won't see links change color after you have visited them. So let's get into styles. There's different ways of doing styles in a website. For simplicity's sake, we're going to just do them all right here in the head of this page. There are other ways. You can use what's called a link tag to reference a style file, which would be, a lot of times the people will call them styles.css, and then they'll just reference it, but that gets a little complicated, so we're going to start with just doing it in the page, and then we will talk about referencing files later. Notice with my IDE, and this is Visual Studio Code, which I will talk about a lot because I like this IDE, it finished this tag for me because I typed style and then it completed the rest for me, so I didn't have to type the end tag. And remember what I said in one of the earlier tutorials, every start tag has to have an end tag, so we're gonna have all of the style code in between these two tags, right? So I talked a little bit about this link here. Right now it's just pretty basic, and so we want to target this link, and then we want to change the color. Right now it is just being defaulted by what the browser specifies. We want to override that with our own color. In order to do that, we want to come back here to this, we'll talk about text alignment in a little bit. Yeah, here we go, text color. You can target the tag and then specify the color. This is a little basic, just calling it by the name. There are some default color values, but you can't really get nitty gritty. I like to use what's called the hex value here. There is this way of using RGB values. So basically hex and RGB are very similar in the sense that we're doing red, green, blue, and basically with these two characters you're basically accomplishing the same thing. The first two is red, the second two are green, the third two are blue. Here you got 0 through 255 through each section. So it's just a different way of doing it. You choose which way you want to do it. If my recommendation is, once you've made a choice of doing hex value or RGB values, stick with that throughout the rest of your application. Don't mix and match, because then it just gets confusing. So we're going to use this hex value, and we're going to write our code like this. So I want to target the anchor tag, not the body or the H1 tag. So to target the anchor tag, I type A, and then I put in those squiggly brackets. And again, this IDE will already pair them up for me because it knows what I'm doing. It's like, hey, this is CSS. When I put a beginning brace, it'll put the end brace in there. I want to hit enter and space those apart, and this is just clean coding practice that I like to do. This yellow thing basically is a warning saying you don't want empty rule sets, meaning having this with nothing in here is just wasted code. So until I type something in here, it's going to complain. And that's another nice thing about IDEs, is they will kind of help you out in that sense. So we want to make this link like a green color, right? So I'm going to do hex and then RGB. So R is red. We don't want any value in red. We do want full green value. That would be FF. And then we don't want any blue. And then I'll put the semicolon at the end of this line. That's common CSS practice. You don't have to have it, but it is common practice to have a semicolon. Notice that the IDE already tells me what this color is going to look like, and that's a pretty bright green. It's kind of ouchy in a sense. But I'll talk a little bit about how you can find the colors you want in a moment. So we're going to save this, and then we're going to go look at this Google. So to be a little more clear, I referenced A, and that references the anchor tag in my code. And so now this matches up with anything that's got an anchor tag. So if I had multiple links with the anchor tag, they would all turn green. It wouldn't be just this one. It'd be anything that's got the A as their tag name. So let's go ahead and reload, and notice how Google turns green. Right? Now if we wanted a green that wasn't quite so ouchy to the eye, we'd come over here and we could say, hey, let's pick a green that's more like this, right? So then we notice this green is 006600, right? That looks a little nicer as to where this is the green I have right now. So let's just change out the maybe we'll do 99 instead of there. So we still want it kind of bright, but let's go and simply go in here and just change these to 99, so it's a little lesser of an intense green. Right? We'll hit reload. So you can find many sites like this. This is just one of the many I found that will help you, and they have different ways. You can sit here and build your color how you want here, and see it gives you the RGB value here. It also gives you those other values if you wanted to use the RGB function, is what it's actually called. And so yeah, this thing here, if you wanted to go that route. So this tool allows you to do it any way you choose to do it. It's kind of cool. Oh yeah, here's the RGB. So it's red, green, blue, and these are just basically the number values of how much of each of those colors will give you this blue, right? So you do have full control of what colors you want and looks you want and things like that, and sites like this will really help you be able to make those choices on your own. So let's talk a little bit about kind of the layout of the page. Generally when you have titles, you don't have the title way over to the left. You generally will have it centered on the page. We do have the power to center that. Here we go, text alignment. Again, this is that W3 Schools site. I had the HTML reference in the earlier tutorials. Now I'm in the CSS reference. I will put this link in the description. Actually, I'll put both of them in there for you. What I like about this is you can just basically go over here to the left and play around. You don't have to come to my channel and watch these tutorials to go in and start learning about fonts, icons, link, all these things. You can just go here and play around, and if you don't want to set up this Visual Studio Code and all that, they actually have a try it yourself capability, and you can play around with things and change things and stuff. You basically just change the values here, click run, and it'll update over here. So you can learn a lot by going to these sites, because I'm certainly not going to cover every little detail. I'm just kind of covering the basics. So I highly recommend that you check these out. And if you look across the top, these first three are going to be basically what I end up covering in these tutorials. So, all right, back to this centering. We went here, we clicked on text alignment. We want to do exactly this right here. So we have a H1 tag in our code right here, and we want to center that text into the center of the page. So we want it to go over here somewhere, right? So because this is exactly what we want, I'm going to do the easy thing, and I'm going to copy, and then I'm going to paste it in my code. One of the things that I sometimes don't like about copy paste is the formatting gets all messed up. See how it just pasted it funny? So then I go and correct the formatting. It's really important to me that code is formatted cleanly. I don't like to have stuff all over the place because then it's really hard to read. If I format it properly, it's really easy for me to come down here and see what I'm doing, right? So that H1 tag, targeting this, and we're saying text align center. We want to center this text. So let's see what happens. We're going to save. We're going to reload. Boom. So this is now centered. So we've done two things so far. We've centered this and we've turned Google green. One of the things that you might be wondering is, how does this get centered when we have this H1 tag around it? Well, each tag has its own default formatting in the browser. In the H1 tag, the default formatting is it goes the entire width of the page, and the P tag also goes the entire width of the page. The button tag does not go the entire width of the page. It has different kind of rules, and these are the default rules. What the button tag rules are is it has a certain amount of padding around the text that you type. So if I type more text, let's just look at the button now, right? See how it looks. If I type more text, the button will get a little bigger and wrap around my text. So each thing is default formatted a little differently, but what's nice about CSS is we have full control of each one of these elements, and we can do whatever we want with them with CSS and override all these rules that are default to the browser. So what we really want to do here is to prove that theory. So in order to do that, I'm going to target the P tag and show you that that P tag, which stands for paragraph, actually is going the full width of the browser. How I'm going to do that is I'm going to add a border around the tag, and look at this suggestion box that says, hey, look at that, you started to type BO, and it gave me a list of suggestions. So I want to say a 1 pixel border. I want it to be solid, and I want it to be, I'm just going to make it a light gray color. So whenever you're doing something that's going to be all letters all the way across, so this and then the 3 C's are the same. Kind of a weird thing about CSS, but basically it's just shorthand whenever you know all of your letters are going to be the same. So we're going to save that, and we're now targeting this tag, the paragraph tag here. And so when I reload the page, what's going to happen is there'll be a border around the paragraph tag, and you'll notice that it extends the full width of the page. So the border is going to go all the way down to here. Boom. So that just proves that paragraph tags extend the full width of your view, or I should say the full width of the container that it is nested within. And we'll get to that later, where we start making containers and putting things in it, and we can specify where those containers go and stuff like that. But for now, we're just keeping this simple. I put a border around there. Maybe we want a little bit of padding because it just looks kind of funny to have that border right up against the text. So we go here and we say, hey, I want some padding around my border of my paragraph. So I'm going to say padding, let's just say 15 pixels. I'm just throwing in a guess there because I'm not a designer. And boom, there we go. Now we have this padding around the paragraph and a border. So anything I put in here will stay within this boundary, and it'll always have that padding, and that'll grow as more text goes in here. So you can see kind of how I could start neatly formatting this page. It'd be a little bit easier to read. Now we're looking at this button, and this is this default gray kind of ugly looking button, and we want it to be something else, right? So what I want to do is I want to make this button specific to being just a submit button. I don't want to target any other button that I decide to place on this page, like a link button or something. I might want to style that button differently than I do this submit button. I don't have anything to submit yet, but I'm pretending this is a submit button, like if I had a form or something. So in order to target something very specific, you have full control of that. And how you do that is you use what's called a class. This class is the attribute allows you to target whatever text you put in here. You get to choose what you want to use, and I chose to call this submit BTN because to me that when I read it I'm like, oh, that's my submit button. So up here in my styles I'm going to cut 2 spaces, right? I'm going to use a dot. So dot is how you reference that it's a class. When you don't use anything, you're referencing tags, and so these have to actually match what your tags are down here. But I want to specifically target this submit button, so I'm going to put a dot and I'm going to call it submit button. Submit BTN, and the syntax is also very important. So if I did this, it wouldn't work. It has to have that uppercase B. The reason I do the uppercase B is it's just easier for me to read. This is called camel case. You might hear that used if you do decide to get into development, different ways of setting up your text. So we're going to go ahead and put our code in here. So the first thing I want to do with this button is I want to make the background a different color. So let's go background color, right? I get a bunch of suggestions here, but I want to come over here, use my little cool tool here and say, what do I want the background color to be? Or you know, I'm going to just make this page really ugly, right? I'm going to choose this purple right here. So that's 9933FF in the hex value down here. And it, of course, moves when I move the cursor. 9933FF, so I got to remember that. So I'm going to do a pound. I'm going to do 9933FF. Case doesn't really matter here. Notice it does show me that purple, which is just, this is an IDE tool. And it's kind of nice to have, but not all text editors will show this. This is very specific to Visual Studio, and it actually allows me to hover over it, and you know, I can literally drag this around and change that value if I want. So I'm going to hit save, and now our button's going to have this beautiful purple background. Boom. See how that works? So now I am styling the button, but if I put another button on here, let's just say, let's just show my example. Right, and I don't specify a class on this button, you'll notice that this button doesn't have the styling that I applied. The reason that is because I didn't put this class on it. So what we'll do is we'll take this class away, because what if I wanted all my buttons to stay the same, right? And then we'll change this to target the element, the HTML element, instead of targeting a very specific thing. Now watch what happens. Because I took that dot away, I'm no longer referencing a class, and I just called this out as the name of the element. So now all button elements will get styled with a purple background. See how that works? So you have full control, and I want to go back to what I had, so I'm going to just undo the work I just did a bunch, save, and we're going to go back to this. I just wanted to prove that point that you have, you can either explicitly style single things by specifying a class on them or things that you want, or you can do them more globally for all the tags that match. You can do that with paragraph tags and so on, because the way we did paragraph, any new paragraph I make is going to follow these formattings that we have here. So I'm going to stop here before this gets too long, but that is basically CSS in its most basic form of how you can control a page. You have control over other things, like the padding of this button, the text color, because obviously this black on this purple is kind of an eyesore, things like that. So we will get into that a little bit deeper, but before I get into that, I'll probably talk about organizing your file system and not doing this all in one file. So I really hope you like this content. If you do, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Peace.